पुरुषोत्तम लोग भी मिलने वाले हैं for doing investments. Enjoy. Okay. ठीक है guys, चलो let's get started everybody. So today is our 5th day of the week 1. It's going to be very important one today. Okay. So we will be getting deep down into how the project work happens end to end. Okay. And this is going to be with regards to somebody having, let's say, 0 to 4 years of experience. Okay. And it is something ki if it is not done in the proper way, there will be a lot of impacts which can come on the teams and the projects. So generally when people say our life is so hectic at work, pressure is coming up, we are not able to make decisions, and like things are becoming unstable, uneasy, frustration at job and all that, it's because majority of the people don't do the things in the right way. And if those right practices are not followed, there will be definite consequences. Okay? The project life is not that simple. It needs to be done in the proper manner, then only life becomes simple. Okay, otherwise consequences will be high. Now, as part of today's session, okay, we are going to touch on how this entire project process happens. Okay, because you need to understand, even if you are joining as a fresher, you are joining a system, and that system is of project development. Okay, so just coding is not your job. Coding is one aspect of full-fledged what you will be doing in the project. And if you struggle in these other areas, the end deliverable, whatever you code, will have concerns and problems. Okay? So step by step, you need to understand what is your role at every phase when the project cycle is happening. And yes, this entire talk, we are going to keep it from perspective of 0 to 4 years experience. So I'll not much talk about what seniors will be doing and all that thing. We'll just maybe give a one-liner, but precisely what you guys should do as beginners into the IT industry. Okay. Now, just understand that there is a way by which project works, and that is called as the software development life cycle. You might have heard a lot during your college days. Wahan se hota hai SDLC. Okay. But speaking about it, since past 10 plus years now, I have always worked on agile projects. Okay. So agile is a software development process. So agile is a software development life cycle, and almost right from the beginning, 2010 say when I started, only for initial 1-2 years it was a non-agile project. So somewhere I got a chance to even experience that kind of a waterfall journey of project development. But otherwise, from that onwards, since past 10 years plus, I am working in agile. Okay, and I have seen multiple phases of the project. I have seen people where they are not aware of agile and they are newly adapting to it. I've seen systems where it was very established. I've seen systems where it was wrongly implemented and a lot of correction needs to happen to do it. I've seen systems where clients and the team both were frustrated because they were not able to get the project in the right manner, and then how those kind of improvements happened. And after a lot of this 10-12 years of into this agile, so I would really like to share you, what are the key disciplines which you should follow. Let's say even if in your project it is not being followed, but apply these disciplines on yourself right from tomorrow at job, and you will start finding a lot of mental peace will come, clarity will come, how to think, how not to think, what to do on a day-to-day job. Okay, so this is what from agile perspective, the best practices we will be applying. And guys, don't do it for others, do it for yourself, because if you work right, if you work properly, you will get the benefit of it. So you're not doing because somebody is asking you to do, you do it because that's the right thing, and that will give you a lot of value. Okay, fine. Now let's, before we dig down into our core topics for today, some of you might having very initial level knowledge of what agile is. Okay, let's speak just 5 minutes. Earlier, the entire project used to happen in bulk. Okay, so take a requirement, and then it was like maybe 6 months project, and then something used to finish, then deploy it into production, and then give it forward. That was like long time ago, maybe a decade ago story. And agile was there since 2000, but for it to pick up in the market, it really took time. Okay, so it is not something new, very purana. What agile says is ki bhai, finish the things as early and take the pieces, whatever is developed, to production as early. This is what agile says. Develop this full project in small pieces and take these small pieces to production. You might have, let's say, full project might have 100 functionalities. Agile says you take some portion of it, do your entire whatever you want to do of design, requirement, development, testing, blah blah blah, and then deploy it into production so that people will start using it also. Okay, there are a lot of benefits, so let's not get into the goods and the bads of agile. You can find it, it's concluded, using agile, customers are more happy, deliveries are happening properly, and business is running very nicely. So people, a majority of the companies are using agile for productive, fast-paced delivery. Without agile, there used to be a lot of performance concerns, long time projects are running, in the end the value is not coming out, customers were unhappy, people start becoming more lazy at work. So there are a lot of reverse consequences with not having agile approach. That is where industry finally said ki agile se kaam karenge, life is going to be pretty good. Okay, now what agile says is same. If there are 100 functionalities to be developed for a project, agile says ki let's do it piece by piece. Okay, and every piece could be, let's say, 2 weeks piece or a 3 weeks piece. The terminology which people call it is like sprint. So let me just say, there are multiple implementations of agile. Okay, so different companies might follow a different approaches. So agile is कि भाई piece by piece development should happen, but how this piece by piece development will happen, that also there are multiple approaches. Okay, one is Scrum approach, another is Kanban approach. These two are the popular ones. Okay, there is a third one, ScrumBan, which is a mixture of Scrum plus Kanban, ScrumBan. Okay, so that is the third approach. Apart from that, there are multiple other things like lean programming is there. Okay, and there was this test driven development, TDD. So those are all variations of like how agile can be implemented, but the popular ones in the market is Scrum, Kanban, and ScrumBan. Some teams use mixture also. Okay, for the sake of simplicity, and majority of the adoption of the market is moving towards usage of sprint. Okay, again, I'll not get in very details of why and all that, because in your companies, in your project, already that decision would have been done by somebody senior management and all that. So let's not peel the onion, let's talk core. Okay, so sprint is something which is majority of the people are using. It is predictable. Okay, how it works is, again, like we said, if there are 100 functionalities, we want to develop it piece by piece, deploy it in production piece by piece. So how this actually works is, they define a time window, and that time window depends from project to project. Generally, I have always worked with a 2 weeks of time window, so which is called as sprint. Okay, so what they say is, out of these 100 functionalities, you pick a few functionality which you can finish in this 2 weeks of time, which is the sprint time. Then you do this entire development, and once these 2 weeks are done, testing, demo, everything happening, and by the end, let's deploy it into production. So by that way, what happens is, so this 2 weeks window, the terminology is sprint, SPRINT. So take a work, finish it in 2 weeks, demo it, test it, all stable, deploy it into production, and then again, one by one, 2 week cycle will keep going on for entire 1 year. So the benefit is features keeps going to production. Okay, now I'll just share my screen, show you guys a quick overview of how agile looks like, so that you can just understand. And today we are not going to get in details of everything. We will focus on two major aspects of it with proper clarity, okay, how you should be performing at work. Okay, so we are going to get very precise implementable level tak jayenge. Okay, fine. So let me share my screen. Okay, so first have a look. Again, this is, okay, just look at it. This is one basic diagram. You can find it on internet, it is available. This is a basic how agile scrum looks like. Okay, so what we have discussed so far. Okay, so agile is develop the project piece by piece. develop project. Recording is available, but it's still, if you want to take some running notes, it is still fine. You will be more involved. Okay, guys, don't sleep and listen. Okay, thoda sa stay awake, listen. This is going to help you in your careers. Okay, develop project piece by piece. Okay, next, multiple ways of doing it: Scrum, Kanban, ScrumBan. Okay, so there are multiple ways. We are going to focus on Scrum for development. Okay, now you need to understand few things. So how it happens is, we understood the terminology sprint. So this is sprint is a 2 weeks working window. Okay, 2 weeks, generally people say 4 weeks also. And if you see it in this diagram, okay, they are saying 1 to 4 weeks of sprint, where you take some task, keep doing it, and in the end deliver it. That's it. So it is simple process. So you, out of long list of requirements, you take some requirements which you can finish it in your 2 weeks of window, keep working for 2 weeks aggressively, finish it, take it to production. Simple. Okay, so that window when we are working for delivering, that is called as sprint. So it is a very basic terminology. Okay, so fine. So sprint window will be finalized. Next, moving on. Okay, now few things you need to understand. Even what are the roles in Agile? Like, who are the people? What kind of roles will be there? There are primarily 3 roles: product owner, Scrum Master, and then rest everybody they call team. In the team, they will have seniors, juniors, dev, which includes UI, server. Next, there will be QA. Sometimes, depending upon the team, there could be DevOps. There are generally shared DevOps people actually for companies. Small team make DevOps nahi dete, but let's say there are 20 teams available, there will be a pool of DevOps, they go and do something. That's how a DevOps role works for majority. Otherwise, if the team has really grown big, so then they hire a DevOps and keep it there. Okay, again, DBA kind of role is also a kind of shared role for a big team. So these are like narrowed down roles, but otherwise these other positions will always be there. Okay, because these are required for day-to-day activity. Okay, now what happens is, how industry projects work. There is a requirement and it has to be delivered back. That is what requirement is: a software, and the software has to be delivered to production. This is what is entire IT industry about. Now these requirement can come from clients, or if you are in a product company, these requirement comes from your company itself, right? So there are like service companies, there is product companies. So in service companies, there will be customers who will give the requirement. In product companies, the company itself comes up with their own product and they come with their own requirements, whatever. But there is requirement which comes. Okay. And finally, that you have to develop it and deliver to production, prod launch. Now, the thing is, I have worked in projects where there was no product owner. Okay, now I want to tell you the need of product owner so that you really understand. So if there is, so what are the parties? Okay, so requirements are coming from client or or customer, nothing but a business person. This is even called as business. Clients, customers, business. Okay, so these guys are giving the requirement. Okay, and now let's say how we break down this developing and delivery. So we had our tech team here in India, okay, and we were directly working with the business people. So I'm giving you a scenario, okay, without product owner, I worked for that kind of a project for around 6 months. So where I directly was interacting directly with the business clients, there was no product owner, and we were developing a big complicated project. Now, what I realized is, business people just say, we want this, okay, but they do not provide clarity okay, how it should be done. Okay, now there are, just understand, there is a requirement. I want a login page. Business people will just say, I want a login page. That's it. Okay, but technical team doesn't just want that. Matlab, we cannot develop something out of our own mind. There are multiple layers. So requirement business gave, just develop a login page or anything. Okay. Iske zyada they don't even tell much. They are not even saying it should have a username, it should have a password, it should have a email based, phone based. They don't know all those things. That's not work of the business to define how the requirement should be. Okay. And for 6 months there was a big time struggle for me as a lead of the team, because there was no product owner, and while I was discussing with them, they used to just tell, okay, we want this, we want that, and there are like 10 number of ways on which the product can be designed, n number of ways will be there, and then we used to give them so many options, and then I realized it's really frustrating to directly work, because they don't understand much of tech and the product aspect of things. They are just business guys. And then I felt the real need ke bhai, there should definitely be a person, and that's where Agile is having that person, and that person is product owner who interacts with the business. So that's a different role itself, and it is really required. Don't try to skip it. I have done that earlier. I used to think maybe khud hi kar lenge, but nahi hota hai. Okay. So what I realized is, as a business, okay, so there is this guy in between. He works with the business, with the clients, understands the requirements. Then he brainstorms. It is his job to then come up with require. Business is saying we want a login page, but this guy, product owner, will come even how the login page should be, how the product should be. That is where he's called as product owner. How the product should be. So it's very important role required. Otherwise, clarity will not be. Okay. So how the product should be. So ऐसा होना चाहिए, ये feature, this feature, and all of that. Then the product owner writes, and then he gives it to the team. So this team is again part of 2 people: Scrum Master plus full tech team. Okay, guys. So far clear, everyone? Just write a few. So far clear, everybody? Okay. So far all good. Just throw a few dones, yes, something if you guys are clear so far. This is basic foundation required so that we can talk more on top of these things. Okay, and this is straightforward stuff, nothing much high fundas here and there, basic, but I want to take it step by step. Okay, fine. Job sharing the screen back. Okay, next. No. So far this is how it is. Now what happens is, let's start breaking down the system in more details. How an entire requirement cycle will be. Okay, so basically we are just exploring this process now, because this is where the entire project development starts. So first there is a requirement which will come to the team from the product owner. Nothing but that is where the first part comes. Requirement. Still some people use it, gathering phase. Okay, now there are multiple terminologies here. Okay, requirement gathering or grooming. People call it grooming. People call it refining, requirement refining meeting. Okay, pata nahi, ek hai, do hai, whatever. Okay. So, but terminology wise, this is the phase: requirement gathering phase or grooming meetings. People might say grooming meetings or refinement, requirement refinement. It is all like clarifying the requirements, where product owner explains the requirements to the technical team. That is the first step for any project. Okay, requirement has to be understood. So he works with the business, comes up with the requirement, and then he gives it to the technical team. That is where apna kaam yahan se shuru hota hai. So you all as a technical team should involve during these calls, even as a junior. Okay, 0 to 4 years of experience. It should be a culture where the full team actually interacts in those calls where product owner is involved. Okay, so if that is not happening in your project, so that is concerning. Okay, so talking about 12 years, it is required. Fine. So now this is the first step. Okay, now multiple things we are going to cover here. Now once these requirements are done, we will get more in details about how this grooming happens, how this refining happens, what should you do, what does the product owner do. We'll get in all those details. Okay, but once the requirement is given, then comes analysis and design, then comes design review, okay, then comes coding related things, and then the rest of the story. Okay, it's still a long story. I'll at least give you guys an initial clarity. Okay, so first step may requirement gathering, grooming, all that will happen. Now, as a part of the second step, analysis and design will happen. Then third, design review will happen. Then fourth, coding will happen. You need to understand, you will get more maturity from this SDLC process. Okay, once you, just a second. Okay, you will get the more maturity about this SDLC process if you really think from a perspective of waterfall model plus agile model. So you need to know how a regular project is and then how agile actually integrates. Okay, because the entire 6 months of what used to happen is now broken down into two weeks of slot. So everything needs to be done differently. Okay, that is how things come in. So I will say initially, step by step we will grasp it. First, requirement gathering, analysis, design, and all. Okay. Now let's fit this up into agile model. So this is a basic standard process. Okay, how does this happen in agile is in the form of different phases. Okay, now there is going to be first refinement or grooming calls. Now guys, don't even think about which work is going to be picked up on the sprint. Okay, I'm not focusing on this part at all right now. Right now the focus is how the requirements are received. Okay, so sprint cycle is different, requirement cycle is different. Try to understand that. Okay, now what happens is, step by step, let's get into. So in our project, every week we have weekly these calls set up as a regular meeting which keeps happening every week. It is a scheduled meeting, recurring meeting, which keeps happening forever. Okay, now it depends, different projects might follow different approach. Some people might do maybe daily also. It completely depends from project to project. But I think since past many years we have been doing weekly refinement, and the work of this meeting is the product owner comes with requirements to the technical team, and then they discuss, clarify, okay, what needs to be done, what does not need to be done. If there are questions to and fro, something will happen. But that is a weekly meeting. Okay, now just imagine what is the end result of this meeting. Okay, so basically the product owner comes with requirements. ऐसे हवा में नहीं बात करेगा. He will not just come, talk, and go. And this is where now comes your best practices of application development. Okay, if in your project requirements are not written properly, there are going to be impact consequences because of that. So as a culture, you should always encourage ki bhai, product owner, give me the requirements in written format. You should encourage. That has to be a thumb rule for your project. Now what happens is they use multiple tools. So now we are expecting product owner. So we said every week there is going to be a recurring meeting. So let's say every Wednesday there will be 1 hour meeting where product owner will come and then he is going to discuss requirements with you. That's a recurring meeting. Every week it will happen. If the product owner says, I don't have requirements this time, so he might just cancel the meeting, but otherwise we are not going to skip it. It is a pattern in the system. Now what will happen is, as this keeps happening, forget about what you guys are developing. Here we are just focusing, requirements are being understood. So as this week by week things goes, week by week these discussions happen, you might ask questions, he comes with requirement. So what he does it, product owner, okay, uses some tools like maybe Jira or Asana or Microsoft Planner. Now it could be multiple tools, okay, anything but requirement of that. Okay, so he comes up, he uses some tool like this where he writes the requirement. Okay, and in agile terminology it is said, okay, they write the requirement in the form of user story. So requirements are given in the form of user story. Okay, nothing but product owner goes to Jira kind of tool. There they create something called as user story, and there, as part of this user story, they explain the requirement. So now, देखो, we will even get into more specifics. What is a user story format and other things. But I want you guys to understand one important piece here. Okay, everybody. If your requirements are not written, you will forget what was discussed. The person who is giving the requirements will forget what was discussed. After 1 month, nobody remembers. And if the product is misbehaving in production environment, tech team suffers, product owner also suffers. Okay? There have been literal cases where product owner gave some requirements to the team, and if it was not written in Jira, after when it goes to production and when it fails, he straight away backed out saying, I never gave those requirements. Okay? So that means you have to hold people accountable for their words, and it can happen only when the requirements are in written format. If the requirements are not written, means there will be confusion, there will be problem. So if in your projects the requirements are not properly written, you need to push back the product owner. Ask your leads, scrum masters, ki bhai, there should be clarity about what needs to be done. That is first step. Okay, now fine, next. Okay, now the next piece. So they will use something, they'll come up with a requirement. Okay, fine, as a form of user story, it will be explained. But now the thing is ki, how exactly this user story should be written. There is also a structure for that, because without following that structure, there will be some other impacts. Okay, so generally how a user story is written, and it, yes, even though you are not going to write it, but at least you should tell, why we need this clarity from every ticket, and in your thought process tomorrow onwards when you code, consider these inputs. Okay, so first, basically, yes, there will be one primary statement, which is nothing but your user story statement. Okay, we'll get into more about it. Generally, it is of a format: as a user, I want a functionality, okay, so that I can achieve this benefit. Generally, so as a user, nothing but who, for whom this feature is being developed. Okay, next, what functionality, and then why. Dekho guys, point is, even though product people are coming up with requirement, but the technical team should fully understand why this feature is actually trying to be built, so that you can do impact analysis, thinking, planning. And if these three questions are not answered, there will, okay, it is an industry, guys, these are standards which Agile has defined, and if these are violated, there will be consequences. Okay, developers will be confused, okay, why this feature is being developed. They will be confused, okay, what exactly is this, and this has to be a one-liner statement, not like one big paragraph. It is very clear one-liner statement, okay, for which person what functionality is required and why it is going to be benefit of this functionality. When these three questions are clear to the product owner and to the technical team, then confidently we can build the right system. Otherwise, there will be confusion, there will be misunderstanding, and then you might end up building something which he says, hey, I don't want this. Okay, so don't get there. So encourage this kind of a template from every user story. You should get this clarity, okay, who wants it, what exactly is required, and why they are really asking for this feature. It is our responsibility. We are not like slaves ki koi bol denga and we just develop. Okay, we want clarity, why we are doing it. We are smart people, tech teams are smart, sensible people. We need to understand so that we can guide the business also with right direction. It's a collaboration. Okay, fine. So that is first user statement. Now there are multiple other sections, okay, which comes. Now there is sections called as acceptance criteria. Okay, next assumptions, next dependencies, next mockups, or some people call it as wireframes. Okay, yeah, these are the primary things, guys. Abhi focus, everyone, all the working professionals. Okay, you abhi, however your product owner gives, but acceptance criteria is कि भाई what are the must haves for this requirement. Matlab, if you guys are developing this feature, he should explicitly mention acceptance criteria. Matlab, if this criteria is met, then only I am going to consider your ticket. So this Jira or this is also called as a ticket or a requirement or a task, whatever. Okay. So multiple terms people will use. So product owners has to explicitly define what is going to be the acceptance criteria. Okay, bhai? So when the user logs in, he should be able to successfully log in. If he has passed invalid details, he should get a failed message. So like this, he defines very clearly what will be his must-haves from this requirement. So that again, this then becomes clear between the product owner and the technical team. Ki bhai, acha, to at least this full checklist should definitely happen because that is a must-have. So it should be explicitly written. And guys, if this checklist is not completed by the developers, okay, product owner can simply discard the feature. They can simply say, we don't want this. That's it. You might have worked for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, but if you did not meet this acceptance criteria, we are going to simply reject the requirement. The product owner has that authority. That is where this is called as acceptance criteria. Okay? Now, the thing is, initially, to itna hi hota. If there are any assumptions, okay, you are assuming okay, some third party will work like this, and with that you are doing so, you can write some assumptions to think about. Some tickets might have it, but now important, while these discussions are happening, so he has written a requirement, he is coming in calls with you, weekly call, he's explaining you the requirement, the product owner. Now, if in this ticket there are any dependencies, you need to identify those dependencies. Dependencies is like, apart from your technical team, anybody else required for accomplishing this ticket, that needs to be identified and clearly mentioned in the beginning point itself. And it has to be very clear, okay, bhai, for this we are dependent upon the DevOps teams to do some setup as part of maybe the Nginx configurations or IP whitelisting or something like that. So for this functionality to go to production, these are the dependencies. We need a DBA approval because this query is going to get pretty complex, so that's a dependency. We need DevOps guys to do something, that's a dependency. Sometimes in your requirement you might integrate with third party companies. Some other third party companies might be there, you might interact with them. Those APIs you would have to code it in your system. Even UI guys also interact with third parties, server also interacts with it. So if there are some unsolved questions, even those can be marked as dependencies. But as a list for this requirement, you need to identify what all dependencies, and guys, these things should not be in your mind because you will forget it. So it has to be written on your Jira ticket. If we have 3-4 dependencies, because when it is written, then somebody has to go ahead to solve those dependencies. It could be a Scrum Master or your leads or any team members. But without knowing these dependencies, you will forget it. Okay, so keep the things out of your mind, keep it on the tool so that you will never miss out on these things and your life will become peaceful. Okay, so going forward, guys, every task you pick, think about these things. Think about are there any pre-assumptions? We are assuming the database data will be of this much size. On top of that, you are developing something. Are there some ground assumptions? And then are there any dependencies? And you have to have all these things clarified with the product. Okay, next, if you're developing a UI feature, mocks, wireframes are very critical thing. Ask for it. Okay, assumptions mein mat karo, they will again ask for rework. Okay, and even like mocks wise, UI people will know it better. So we need to make it responsive, to mobile compatible, desktop compatible, resolution wise proper, multilingual, different language support has to be there. Okay, cross browser support has to be there. So there is a lot of drama behind it. So you need to have clear cut mocks also specified in the requirement. And these all things should happen before you even pick this item for development. Okay? All of these things should be clear. So we are not even going to development yet. We are just talking pre-sprint activity. Okay. And after doing all of these discussions, so let's say the product owner logs in Jira, he specifies all these requirements, and then he has arranged a weekly call where he comes in a meeting called as grooming, refining, requirement gathering, whatever you might call, and where he explains all these things to you guys. So it's a handover between them and you. Okay. Now there could be multiple outcomes. Maybe during that call itself, you get questions. Generally, without questions, no feature is developed. There will be questions, there will be confusions. It has to be a to and fro. Okay, how Agile says is, he product owner comes with partially ready tickets. He doesn't come with 100% perfect tickets. He comes with partially ready tickets. Maybe initial some work will be done, and then he starts discussing with the technical team, and then together they agree upon what the requirement should be. Okay, so understand, technical team role is not to be a dummy person कि भाई whatever product says you take it and you start building it. You need to actively think logical during those grooming calls and accordingly take it forward. Okay, so just know these things. When he comes with requirement in this call, there will be questions. There has to be questions because he has not thought of it cleanly. You need to think about, is it possible to technically implement? What could be the challenges which will come? And then accordingly suggest back, hey, this is not right, can we do it like this? A to and fro should happen. Okay, so as part of this refinement call, okay, to and fro discussions to finalize the requirement. And one important thing comes again as part of your, and these all things are mentioned in your Jira, guys. This has to be written in Jira. Then comes maybe questions, clarifications. So based upon all of these discussions, you need to fill up these information, and this all happens before the development. Forget about development right now. We are not even talking about that. This all happens while the requirement is coming to you. Okay. Now, okay. So far, absorb it, guys. Take a moment, absorb it. Okay. So clear, simple. We are just going step by step. Recording will be available. You can go through it. Just if you are understanding it, just absorb it and write a few dones in chat. I'll take a pause here. I'll still keep my screen shared. Just look at it. What did we discuss so far? Just think about it once again. Because we are going to add more intensity to this. Okay, or we are going to get into more phases, more details of things now. Okay, ठीक है, let's do one thing, everyone. Okay, take a deep breath and exhale. थोड़ा mind को fresh करते हैं. Okay, because next once we open, things will start getting more complicated because अभी अपन project में dig in करेंगे. ठीक है, so take a deep breath and exhale. Okay, deep breath again. Guys, take it. Lakshmi खाली बैठा है. Breath किधर हो रही है Lakshmi? Lakshmi, Narayana, take a deep breath and exhale, man. It really relaxes. Mind को fresh करना पड़ता so that it can stay active all throughout. Okay. Okay. Again, एक बार. Take a deep inhale from your nose, exhale from your mouth, slow and deep. 6 times कर लो, you will find very relaxation. Okay, rub your palms against each other. ठीक है, roll it over your face. थोड़ा बॉडी को एक्टिव रखना पड़ेगा, ठीक है, अदरवाइज सब सोते मिलेंगे बाय द एंड ऑफ द सेशन. ठीक है, इट डजंट वर्क लाइक दैट. ओके, चाहिए तो गो ड्रिंक सम वाटर एज वेल. Now let's get started. Okay, now let's get started into deeper things. Now what happens? Okay, So this is where he just came with the initial level requirements. Now, what is happening is, guys, abhi tak start of the sprint is different. We are not even touching there. Now, what happens is only the initial level requirements came till this point. It is only the first interaction. What should be your main checklist? Okay, what should be your main checklist? First should be the requirement should be written in Jira. That should be your first checklist. Your second item in the checklist, the product owner. Okay, small tickets we can ignore, but for all majority, almost 80% of the ticket, the product owner should come in the call and explain you those requirements. This is a blunder which is happening in many projects. Product owner says, I have already written the requirement, now why this call is then required? Go through it and start building. That doesn't work. There could be a lot of understanding problems. What is written might be interpreted wrongly. So your checklist here, you should ensure, okay, the requirement should be written in Jira. Okay. Second, product owner should get in call to explain the requirement. Guys, because a lot of understanding problems might happen. These two happen. Okay? And then as an end result, maybe you will have some questions, clarifications in the call itself. You fill that up there itself. Okay. But then what we do in our project, because one call of 1 hour is not sufficient, because they will come up with many requirements. So what we do is, and this is not what Agile has said, but we are doing it because we felt it is needed for system. What we do is we arranged another call called as internal grooming. Okay, that is the second call that we do apart from the product owner related. Okay, here what are we doing here is, some guys of the team, okay, takes these requirements, further thinks deeper. So some seniors of the team basically. देखो guys, if you work in small scale company, medium scale company, even as a 2 years of experience, you would have to do the stuff there. Okay, so maybe seniors might not come, but for some big established companies, maybe some senior will do. But what we now expect as a second step, now you figure out how to position this as part of your team. Some senior comes in, okay, and that senior guy is going to read all this ticket, okay, understand it fully, think about, okay, how to develop it, what could be the complexities, what should be the database design, what could be the problems. Nothing but some seniors of the team will go through requirement independently. Okay, we'll go through requirement, seniors go through requirement, okay, thinking from tech implementation aspect, which includes DB design, application design, okay, architecture, okay. So coding architecture, basically your controller service, microservices related, where and how it should be, how complicated the things could be. So all of these, the senior of the team starts thinking about all this. Okay, independent. यहाँ पे पूरी team की जरूरत नहीं है, because he is capable enough to do that work. Okay, so he thinks about all of these things. Okay, and then if there are dependencies, and then he comes up with his own second level of questions, more questions, because 2-3 multiple iterations has to happen to finalize on requirement. He comes up with the second level of questions just like that. So that is second step where we are doing in our system. Seniors do that without other team members. That gives them the peace of mind to think, if you are that senior of your team, you are supposed to do all this. That will save life of you guys. Now once this happens, then comes the third stage, okay, internal grooming. So here full team connects again. Okay, now full team connects again in order to discuss on top of whatever the tech lead has discussed independently, whatever they understood out of it, and now they get into more details okay, where everybody is aware, okay, why, how to build this from tech implementation perspective. Okay, next, what could be the impact analysis? Like if you are developing this feature, maybe is there a related feature like that? If you do the implementation, what kind of complexity will come? Okay, what will be the risks which will happen if you are developing this feature? Again, what will, everything basically is discussed with everyone. So guys, you don't know, okay, whether you will be working on this feature or not, but it is required that as a team, everybody should have a clarity what features are there, and people can smartly brainstorm together to finalize, okay, what needs to be done. So that is where this further call happens, where everybody in the team is having a clear picture, okay, by what exactly needs to be done as part of this. Okay, so यहाँ पे guys, even high level tech design is finalized. High level. Okay, I'll even speak more about this tech design. Sometimes the requirements might be very more complex, so it is not possible to where the tech lead just throws maybe few hours and then figures out. Sometimes he might say, I need 2 days of time to really design this solution. So then that is, it has to be done separately. We'll talk about those kind of work separately. But as part of this, so now every team member is available. You ask the team member, okay, bhai, are you understanding the requirements? Okay, did you get what it is? Then people, the seniors, the juniors, they all ask their tech questions. How to develop, what to do, what can be their database? Like, can we use some AWS service here? Can it be done in this manner? Can it be done with that manner? Nothing but your tech expertise start coming up. How to really build this solution? Okay? And we introduced this because not having it, people were just confused what to do, how to do. And then we introduce this layer, it is mandatory, where this brainstorming happens, where we discuss what is the complexity, are there any risks in the system. Let's say a third party did not give us any dependencies with third party, let's say credentials. So when you are writing integration, API integration, you might not get credential, they might not set up environment for you. बहुत problems होते हैं. ठीक है, so you have to start thinking about all of that. And then the expectation of this technical grooming call is, okay, everyone in the team is clear with high level requirement. Everyone is clear with high level requirement. Okay, next, high level tech implementation approach is clear. High level tech implementation approach is clear. Next, all dependencies, we already spoke in the first call itself, but यहाँ पे proper list बनेगी कि we are not missing out anything. All dependencies are tracked. ठीक है? Next, okay. Generally, what happens is, if this requirement, okay, if this requirement which he gave is a very big requirement, okay, as if let's say 5 days of work, 7 days of work, something like that. So generally, it is always encouraged in the agile world that your requirement should be as small as possible. Okay, as small as possible, 2 days kind of, maximum 3 days. So generally, the requirement needs to be broken down into smaller pieces. So if that, because it's very tough to estimate a big ticket. If your work itself is requirement is just thrown so much, the technical team will definitely miss it, guys. These are agile basic mandatory disciplines. If your requirements are too big, team will miss some requirements, testers might miss some requirements, quality will be compromised, delivery will take more time where people are unhappy. So don't get into that. Change it into the model requirement. If you feel it is too big of a requirement, ask the product owner, why, break it down into smaller tickets. Try to really scope it down in a manner ki bhai, we can take smaller scope which we can finish in 2 days, and like that maybe you put 3 user stories, but one is too big. So these kind of discussions, and technical team has to do that. Product owner is not going to do it. You have to do it. You have to raise, why it's not complicated, we cannot do it like this. Break it down into smaller pieces. Okay, so just write it down. Okay, so next will be split user. अरे आशु थोड़ा छोड़ दे भाई स्क्रीन को. अभी क्या पेंटर बन जाएगा भाई कॉल में ठीक है. I don't know how to wipe this. Maybe I'll stop the screen share back again, but otherwise, okay, sharing it again. Okay. Next, split user stories into smaller manageable items. This is very important. Otherwise, full life complex chalegi. Because big story, you will miss the requirement. You will not understand something. Development wise, you can miss something. Testing wise, you can miss something. Quality will be compromised. It takes more time also. You might not be able to fully analyze the dependencies. That is where Agile is strictly saying make smaller user stories so that all of this work can happen as smoothly and easily as possible. Very important piece. Okay, chalo. Now next, the user story is done. Now generally what happens is one task needs to be broken down into, in Jira, if this user story is coming, okay, needs to be broken down into subtasks. Now this completely depends on project to project, okay, how you guys do it. Okay, it completely depends. There is no standard defined. It's just like you try to break down your full requirement. So user story is one something which will be available in Jira. You can break it down into subtasks. Generally what we have been following, plus multiple companies have been following, is they ideally create UI task, server task, QA test case, QA execution. These are the basic task subtasks which they create. Okay, and here you can include it, there is no standard for it now. Okay, you can create further dependency as a subtask. You can create if you want some more clarity about something, so you can create one task for that. For example, every time there is a new integration, so as a safety measure, the credentials should not be stored in your code. Okay, the username, password of database and all these things should not be stored in your code, not committed in your repository like Bitbucket and any place. Okay, these credentials should be stored in some secured third party place. Maybe AWS credential store is available. Okay, nothing, but now you need to understand, for this requirement we need to take those credentials, and those credentials should not come from your code, but it should come from AWS credential manager service. So then that has to be mentioned here as a task point or somewhere, so you don't forget it later, because the team is working on multiple user stories. Okay, so all of these things, maybe dependencies and all. So, but general practice, UI task, server task, QA test case, QA execution. And while these discussions are going on, tech implementation, how it should be, high level technical design, how it should be, while this brainstorming is happening, lot of ideas will come. Where many people in the companies go wrong is they don't capture these ideas, or they are like, we discussed everything, still you guys have not implemented. This is going wrong in IT. Or discussions are happening, brainstorming is happening, but people are forgetting those things. Don't do that. So what you need to do is, as soon as these brainstorming discussions are happening, somebody in your team should start writing those details somewhere into this. UI guy becomes busy in some tracking. अरे हाँ, इसके लिए ये भी करना पड़ेगा, ये भी करना पड़ेगा. So while there are 10 people thinking together, lot of ideas will come, and then in the subtask, people can start making running notes about it. Or a DB, it could get complicated here, so we might have to apply even a primary index here, or a proper index needs to be created, tuning like that. Here we should use a procedure, not use a like application side processing. Here a Redis cache has to be better implemented. All these discussions will happen during this internal grooming. Okay, how do you implement it technically? And whatever those thoughts are coming, you need to immediately summarize it into the subtasks. Not doing it, say, gadbad hote chale. And at least high level, we are not saying get into very core of how to do things, but high level checkpoints should be clear, because guys, that high level understanding will help you to estimate the ticket. Tukka nahi maar sakte, right? How much time it will take. You need to know tech wise what all needs to be done in order to estimate this ticket, because all that is going to be part of the same process. Okay, so then you create these subtasks and you take these running notes of each of this thing. Okay, the QA things, impact analysis wise, what might come, what might not come, he puts all of that here. Very good. Next comes another stage. Dekho, We are just thinking logical. If there are questions coming up, yes, you guys are writing the questions also. If there are any open questions which needs product clarifications or anything like that, those are also written. Okay. So everything is tracked basically. A very effective session has to happen, guys. ऐसे नहीं हवा में बात कर रहे. Okay, clarity, core. Now then comes the next phase, guys. कि भाई estimation. Guys, we will still take this session till 10:15 because we want to close this topic. Okay, so maybe 15 minutes more we will stretch. It's important. If we close it in one shot, it will be easy. Okay, now estimation. This is where it comes. Okay, so just know a few things. You cannot estimate a ticket if you are not clear what needs to be done. You cannot estimate it. And estimation is not like playing game, dice roll करके मन में जो आया वो बोलते. Estimation has to be clear, and for estimations to be as clear as possible, you should know key at a high level what needs to be done. So there is a dependency. Many people don't get this clarity because they never brainstormed it, and then people will ask estimation because that's the end conclusion. If you are going to develop this ticket, tell us how much time it will take. That's an obvious question. ऐसे तुक्के में नहीं बोलेंगे भाई infinite time ले लो. That is a mandatory measure, and you have to learn estimation. There is no escape for it. And how can you really learn estimation is if you can start understanding these tech parts. Okay, so technically we have to do piece 1, piece 2, piece 3, piece 4. Those all pieces you're writing it in the server task. If you're a server developer, ye 4 lagega meko. Matlab I would have to do this also, and then roughly you have to think about, okay, so if I have to do 4 items for finishing this task, how much these 4 items will be taken, and then estimations has to be got into as narrow as UI development. How much UI development will take? Next, UI unit testing will take. Next, server development will take. Next, server unit testing will take. Okay. Next, UI server integration if they need additional time. Next, QA test cases. Next, QA execution. You need to think for a given ticket estimation at this precise level. Okay, how much hours of work do you think a UI developer will need? The UI developer says, I feel it is a 8 hours of work for me. Unit testing, he might say it is a 4 hours work for me. Server development, you say, man, it is like 2 days of work. So let's say 16 hours of work for me. Unit testing, he says, okay, let's take it half, 8 hours of work for me. Integration, they might say we are doing it almost parallelly, so maybe 2-3 hours of integration. Okay, QA says I need like 4 hours for writing test cases. Execution says, hey, I need maybe 1 day for this execution, which is like 8 hours of work. So you need to get into that precise. That is where everybody in the team is available. And even though you are at a junior, it's 0 to 3 years. Beginners se generally freshers ko thoda nahi puchenge because they are still new. But as you start growing, even with 1 year, 2 years, you should start answering how much you will really take for doing development. And yes, your seniors will guide you, but the only approach for doing that is you should be clear at a high level what needs to be developed, and then while the brainstorming is happening, you should write some granular inputs also about it. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, this all will be required, and then these all items will take this much time so that you can estimate. And guys, it is a skill you have to develop. If you cannot think right, future mein complications will grow more, because during analysis, this is all analysis happening. During analysis, you missed something. Because of that, your future development activity will be missing. And that's a problem. Okay? So estimation, you need to do this mandatory high level clarity. While the brainstorming is happening, think about it second level. After that, you need to think about, so UI guys talk about their work, server talks about their work, QA talks about their work. That is where we estimate, let's say whatever X hours of work. Generally people say X hours of man days or man hours. That's the terminology. X hours of man hours. मतलब एक बंदा, if one person does this all thing, it is going to take that much time. But generally 3 people will be working, so it happens in a faster pace. But you know how many X hours of work is done, and guys, this is required. This is very important thing. Without knowing this clarity, if you pick up ticket for development, your life is going to get messy. Some stage will come in your career where things will backfire. Okay, fine. Estimation. We will connect further how this converts into a sprint planning and then to development. So everything is important. That's where I said today's session is very important, because based upon that, our future sessions will be dependent. Without requirement, with tambura banaoge. Okay, so that is important. Fine. So estimates done. Okay. So guys, so far clear. Now we have to get into details, okay, but just absorb it for a moment. There is one last thing which I want to pick as part of this topic, and then we are done for the day. Okay. Okay, somebody is saying I have one question during story point. Now next is that point, story point. We are going to talk about the story pointing factor now. They ask everyone how much time the ticket will take, but it is not right now. Can anybody judge the time? Yes, yes, this is what I am saying, guys. It has to come here only. If you are not able to do it, that means you are not clear on the ticket. That's the problem. You cannot, you have to estimate the work here only. This is the only place where the estimation should happen. Okay, when the requirement. So if you are not able to estimate, matlab you are not clear with the implementation, okay, what the approach should be. Okay, or you're not clear with the detailed aspect of things, so you should ask more questions. It is required, guys. This is how the projects work. You need to give clarity, okay, how much time it will take. If you don't have that, then you need to still ask more questions. But this is the phase, it has to happen beforehand itself. Mandatory, guys. All these things are mandatory. Do it here only, otherwise consequences will come later. If you don't do it right now, life hell hote chalti hai, guys. Clients will be unhappy, frustration will happen. They'll be like always late delivery, always bad quality of work, and then you will not feel like working, and then stress, deadlines, everything. So do it right. Think about how do you solve it by asking the questions. Okay, fine. The estimation. Now comes one more factor in agile terms, which is story pointing. Okay, so the story points are also kind of estimates only. So hourly estimates, agile is not talking about hourly estimates, but somewhere we, like, we, my team, plus what work I have done since past 10 years, we realized ki bhai, even though agile is not asking for hourly estimate, we should think like that. We need to have a mix of hourly plus story pointed approach. Agile is not saying hourly, but doing it will make us really perfect in what we do. Okay, so in our project, in my project, this is happening as a measure. We don't violate it because we want that precision also. Plus, at the same time, we are doing what agile is saying. Guys, this is all truly based upon experience. We saw ki if only story point estimates are not really working out. We need more detail, because team is not, when we ask you this, then the team gets this, then the team goes here. If we don't ask you this, you just story point, you are not clear what needs to be done. So the right questions will help you to build the right system. The right question is, tell us, developer, how much time will you take? UI, you tell how much time, and you cannot just tell one day, because you have to know why it will take one day. So the right question will help you to think right. Story pointing doesn't really give you that kind of sense, okay, to estimate. You just give a number, 2, 4, like 2, 3, 5 Fibonacci number, something you might just throw, and like I said, tukke mein, and that is where project starts struggling, because clarity is missing in this phase. So this, even though agile doesn't say it, I would say you start measuring for yourself. This will help you to think clear. Okay, not optional, guys. It is important. Experiment it. If you find it valuable, apply. Agar nahi ho raha hai kuch difference, you find your call. Okay, fine. Now comes the last piece of this grooming, which is story point estimate. So generally a Fibonacci number is chosen, guys. Story point is nothing but for every user story. So this is a user story where we give the requirement. So for every user story, you should assign a story point. It is also kind of an estimate. which is a kind of a Fibonacci. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. So you have to give this one number which is going to talk about estimation for that ticket. Okay. The need of story pointing comes for two purposes. One is velocity driving. Okay. The other one is comparison. Okay, with existing tickets. This is where story points are useful. Okay. Story point actually helps in velocity, like per sprint. Velocity means let it go as a bouncer, it's fine. Okay. Because right now I'm not going to get, I'll tell you how to interpret story points also. I'll give you a system. Even Agile there is no defined way of writing it, but I'll still suggest you how exactly to do it. Okay, which you can apply from work maybe right tomorrow onwards. Okay, per sprint, what should be, okay, per sprint, how much story point of work you guys are delivering? Per sprint, how much story point of work? So it helps to size the full sprint. For example, if you are a team of 7 members, okay, and then you have done so many. So we are going to, let's say there is a user story 1, user story 2, user story 3. Okay. Now, if the story point of the first is 2, for second is 3, let's say for this one is 2. So nothing but 3 plus 4, 7. So 7 story points. If let's say for one sprint, you guys are doing 7 story points of work. So this 7 is called velocity. Okay. Now what will happen is then sprint 2 will come because you will keep working chain by chain. So then sprint 2 will come. And then again, so there will be some numbers 5, let's say 1, let's say 2. So then velocity for this sprint is going to be 8 story point. So right now as a junior, I will say, okay, don't think much about this part. Okay, it is required for a lot of other important decisions. So it is required. I'll just say it is required, and you have to give story point. Not doing it is not an option because there will be a lot of project decisions which will be not happening if this velocity is not coming. It helps to predict future. So, but let's not don't bother yourself if you don't understand that part right now. But velocity is something like this. Since the terminology came, so as I just explained, we will go it in detail in the next week while we are touching more of these topics. Okay. And comparison with existing tickets is like in the past, if you would have done something of 3 story point, so you can say, oh, same complexity hai to 3 hi hoga iska. So it really shields a lot of internal details, like abstraction wise you start speaking. Okay, that's how it helps. Now, but fine. Okay, so how to calculate story points? Generally, people don't follow any approach. They just try to compare it relatively. They just try to throw gut feeling. There are agile suggestions key. Every team member puts their number, like show of hands, 4 story points, 5 story points. They write down the numbers and all that thing. And then averaging out, we ask people, why do you think it's 8? It should be 5. And then thoda bargain hota, and finally you guys agree on some number. Generally, people do this. But there is problem in that approach because people are not clear कि क्या कर रहे हैं, खाली खेल मजाक जैसे. Okay, it doesn't really get through properly. I'll give you a more organized way of story pointing. Okay, but it's completely up to you guys how to take it. But if you are a good decision maker in your team, maybe you can take this. Story pointing is a factor of 3 efforts. Okay, next complexity, next risk. Depending upon the ticket that you're doing, you need to consider these 3 factors for giving the story points. Efforts, like how many man days it is going to take. Let's say it is a 3-day ticket, 3 days. Okay, so you basically just score it. Okay, 3. Now complexity, how much complicated you think this ticket is. They will just ask you rate the complexity. Just say abhi guys star mark rating hota, right? You purchase something on Amazon or somewhere, you just give a star rating, half star, 1 star, 5 star, like that. If you want to judge the complexity of this ticket, what do you feel? Is it 0.5 complex, or is it 1 complex, or is it 1.5 complex? You just pick a number. What is your complexity? If you see that in this ticket there could be any risks could be like, hey, you are not clear, okay, when the third party will give something back to you. So again, you have to even put this risk also into some number like this. Okay, so whether it is going to be this, whether it is going to be this, or whether it is going to be this. So generally the approach is, okay, man days divided by 2 plus complexity plus risk factor. Okay, so if man days divided by 2, this is what really worked out for us. Okay, but it completely depends if your guys are having a different idea, but this is how we implement it. So if we say 3 days of work, so what we do is story point should be 1.5 plus whatever complexity you say. Okay, it is a 0.5 complex, go ahead, 0.5 complex. If you think it is 1 complex, go ahead, 1 complex. Then if you see there is any risk coming along with it, then write down the risk factor. Maybe it's like 1 ka risk bhi hai bhai. Okay, fine. So then it becomes 3.5. And then this number which is coming 3.5 story point, you need to again think logical कि भाई Fibonacci में कहाँ पे बैठ रहा है, and then you see, oh, it is actually 3, so you cannot use a 3.5 number, so then you have to average out to be 3. If it comes, let's say 4.5, then it averages out to 5. So there is a reason ke Fibonacci. It is a general universe way of working. As things takes more time, it becomes more complex. Even though you cannot estimate between 8 and 13, you should not put 10 there, because that's a natural way of working. With more complexity, you don't really know, it will have more hidden problems. That's where Fibonacci sequence is used for story pointing. It's a natural way of thinking, and that's the right approach. So don't really doubt कि मेरे को 10 देना था, 11 देना था, नहीं यार देना है तो 13 दो and justify. Otherwise, give it 8 only and justify, or break down the story into smaller and then give and justify. But yeah, this is how you give story pointing. It will work for you like anything. You need to consider how much time it is going to total take. This effort is this effort, UI plus server plus QA, total time required, and then divide it into 2. It will give you a number, and then in that, if there is going to be complexity, some factor, consider that. If there is going to be risk, some factor, consider that, and then comes story point, and this will help you to properly estimate that ticket in terms of story point, and then you give a number. And all of this thing get tracked in Jira. There is going to be in Jira a field, original estimate. There is a field. As part of your sprint planning meeting itself, you should log this original estimate. Next, there will be a field called as in Jira story point. You have to again log the details there. Okay. So, and then all these questions and everything should be there. And this is the end result out of your sprint grooming. That means before your sprint starts, these things are already finalized. Okay, before your sprint starts, these things are already finalized. Okay, fine. This is what I know. Okay, for some of you guys, thoda sa heavy ho gaya rahega, but we are trying to make it as step by step as possible. But this is how IT works. This is how it works. You cannot override it. You can, yes, smartly make changes, but this is how it is. Let me share the attendance and then we'll close the session, everyone. Recording is available. I'll paste these notes also on my LinkedIn blog there. So maybe I'll put it into PPT somewhere it's more readable. So go through that. Don't, guys, this your next 5 years you can work like this. Okay, as simple as that. So just understand the criticality of things. Let me paste the requirement and then attendance. Let me paste the attendance. Okay. Copy. Okay. Yes, there might be some questions somewhere here and there. Again, as part of today's attendance, write those questions down. Okay, write those questions down. We will process it. So code is 2323. Okay. Now mark the attendance, everyone. So guys, without getting into granular estimate, if you try to do story pointing, people are just playing basically. They don't know what they are doing. So you need to make it more practical. That's where we really merged for SDLC का concept लेके we merged it with the agile concept so that we can talk very cleanly what we are doing. That saves a lot of your future complication which will come during the development phase. Okay? So all the very best team. Okay, welcome to the IT. uh, that's what it's a life full of good things. Good things. You need to really do things in the right manner. Consequence impact will come, guys, if you don't do that. Fine. Mark the attendance and just a few things. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., we are going to arrange a session for job seekers on job hunting strategies. So if any of your friends, if you're already working, so yes, not required, but if any of your friends are doing actively job hunting, switching, even working professionals, it might work out. Okay. So, but if you're doing a job searching, okay, and so just join in. So if you're doing job search related as a fresher or a working professional, tomorrow 2 hour session, 8 to 9 we will be doing. Okay. And yeah, thank you everyone. Go through this today's session again. Don't take it as a theory session. Try to see what changes you want to bring to your next work. You can do it even if your team is not doing any of this, but you start implementing these for your tasks which you work. It will make you a very good IT professional. Okay. Chalo, thank you everybody and see you guys then on Monday 9 p.m. Okay, Monday 9 p.m. everyone. Take care. Copy the attendance link, guys, if anybody has not picked up. थोड़े लोग ऐसे करते बाद में क्लोज हो गया कहाँ गई लिंक. So thank you all. Take care. And okay, Monday we will meet on coding, how to code. And then there is a next process of this. There is a long process of how the SDLC works. So we will touch on the coding aspect and then we will go forward. So thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.